Hello, friends. About 10 years ago, I graduated college and was unable to find immediate work. I got pretty desperate around Christmas time. So I took on the iconic role of Santa Claus at my local mall. But since Christmas was probably my favorite holiday, I've never had a problem getting into character. And well, thanks to my love of pizza and beer, I've never had a problem looking the part either. All it took was the addition of one of those glossy fake white beards in the iconic red suit itself, and I was making myself feel festive just by looking in the mirror. I had the voice down, the suit, the beard, and if I'm being honest, I was pretty proud of how good a Santa I was. Outside of the holiday season, I now work as an admin assistant for a shipping company. Not exactly the most exciting job in the world, but it pays all right. So when the annual opportunity to don the red suit and make some kids smile comes around, I jump at the chance. However, during my time on the job, the most valuable lesson I learned was that you can never ever promise the kid anything. There will be some children that ask for unrealistic gifts for Christmas. Some are just impossible to procure, like I want a dragon, a horse, a tank. But sometimes they'll ask for other things that are a little more sensible, just way out of their parents' holiday budget. So I'd learned to give them my best. Santa will try his best for you, before moving the topic of conversation to something else. Christmas last year was pretty rough though, mainly because I'd made the decision to make it the final one I'd play Santa. But it was rough for other reasons too. I developed quite the working relationship with some of the mall employees, both short and long term. So it was quite emotional when I announced I'd be hanging up the Santa hat to spend more time with my family around the holidays. Anyway, Friday, December 22nd was my last shift before we switched over to the new guy playing Santa Claus. And the mall was way busier than expected. I mean, it always gets pretty hectic the closer you get to Christmas. But even I've never seen anything like it in all the years that I've been playing the role. This final day of festivities was easily the toughest one to date, as I knew after that day I'd be moving on from playing Santa Claus. I know this seems kind of suspect. Most people feel liberated when they leave a job like that. But at the risk of sounding sort of sappy, I didn't have many good Christmases growing up, so I felt like a lot of the festive spirit was me making up for lost time. They say that time flies when you're having fun, and never was a truer word said. That last day flew by quicker than I could have ever expected. 1 minute, it was lunchtime. The next, the sun had set, and it was fast approaching the time when I'd have to wrap everything up. But just as I was beginning to leave, I noticed a little girl slowly approaching me. "Well, hello there, little one, and where are your parents?" I kept the voice on, giving her my warmest Santa smile. She didn't say a word. She just gave me this tired look and kept walking toward me, with her arms held aloft as if she wanted to be picked up. I looked around for her parents, but I didn't see anyone that was obviously accompanying her. So I picked the little girl up and plopped her down on my lap, just as I'd done 1,000 times before. "And what might your name be, young lady?" "My name is Holly." "Holly. Well, I never. What an adorable festive name. The Holly and the Ivy is one of my favorite Christmas songs. And may I ask, what is your last name, Holly?" "Donachie. It's Donachie." I nodded to the nearby mall security to have the name Holly Donachie broadcast over the mall speaker system. That way her parents would come and find her. No doubt they'd be extremely worried at this point, but all the while this was happening, I would keep her company. "And what is it that Santa can do for you this Christmas, Holly?" Again, she didn't answer. She looked off into the distance, as if she were staring at nothing, like the 1,000-yard stare you hear about nom-vets having. She then looked up at me with the saddest set of blue-green eyes I'd ever seen. "All I want for Christmas is a friend." I was dumbstruck. In all my years of playing Santa Claus, I never had any kids say they wanted a friend for Christmas. It was absolutely heart-wrenching. All I could think to do was to pat her on the head. "Well, I can be your friend, Holly. Santa Claus will always be your friend. And I'm sure a little girl as lovely as you would have no trouble finding herself a friend." She gave me a weak smile and hugged me, and then hopped down off my lap. I tried to stop her from just running off, but I was hesitant to actually grab her by the arm, lest I upset her. I called her name a few times, but she didn't seem to listen. She just disappeared into the throngs of festive shoppers. I tried to follow, but there was no sign of her. So I started asking around if anyone had seen a little girl, about 4 feet tall, long brown hair, those almost luminous blue-green eyes, kind of shabby appearance. And not a single person had any idea what I was talking about. It took a fair few minutes for members of the mall security staff to actually wade through the sea of people and make it into Santa's grotto. When I told them that she ran off into the department store, they started to become worried. Have any parents showed up looking for her? I asked. No, no one. Maybe she just wandered here after getting out of the house or something. Parents don't even know to look here. I was getting increasingly anxious as time went on, but after a thorough search of the mall and some intensive studying of the CCTV camera, there were no signs of little Holly. It was like she just dropped off the face of the earth. I suppose that should have been the last of it, but for some reason, I couldn't keep this little girl off my mind. The way she acted when questioned about her parents compared to how forthcoming she was with all the other stuff left a really bad taste in my mouth. So one morning after a dog walk and a little breakfast, I sat down on my computer and I plugged the little girl's name into Google. I don't quite know what I was expecting to find. Nothing, if I'm being honest. But what I did find absolutely horrified me. December 23rd, desperate mother pleads for return of missing girl. 9-year-old Holly Grace Donachie was reported missing by her mother, Lily Rose Donachie. At the time of her disappearance, the little girl was wearing a blue and white dress, white tights, and said her hair was in bunches. She is approximately 4 feet 2 inches tall, weighing at 60 pounds, and has brown hair and blue-green eyes. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of any missing person, please contact the Suffolk County Police Department at 617-635-1100. I was stunned. I just saw her a few weeks before on the 22nd. Perhaps it was a typo, but the more I researched, the more uneasy I became. The next article sent shivers down my spine. January 4th, breaking. The remains of the missing 9-year-old girl, Holly Donachie, were found today, January 4th, in a wooded area about 3 miles away from her home. Suffolk County Police were investigating the cause of death, which appeared to be an act of foul play. Holly was gone. She died just a few weeks after I met her, and all she ever wanted was a friend. I worked in a toy shop for a couple of years, and as you can imagine, Christmas was a pretty intense time for all of us who worked on the holiday shifts. It was impossible to get that job without being an intensely enthusiastic, happy, smiley kind of person. Like 80% of the staff were entertainers or had come from some kind of performance background. And we were living the dream, so to speak. We were actually getting paid to play with toys, joke with the kids, and above all else, Christmas was the best time of the year for that toy shop. Christmas time has such a magical feeling about it, especially if all the staff have a Christmas spirit about them. Now, our store was hugely into Christmas, to the point where our smart casual uniforms even had assistants to Santa Claus or Santa's little helpers, or other various things written in big writing over the back. This, of course, led to some fantastic interactions with kids, asking about if we'd met him and things like that. Being the only staff member who had actually worked with children for years, these questions were normally sent my way to be answered, because I always had one ready. So that's the backstory out of the way. One weekday, at an oddly quiet moment, I was on my own on the shop floor, while the other staff members restocked after an afternoon rush. A boy comes in, unaccompanied, must have been about 9 or 10, smiles briefly at me and then starts walking around. I give him a couple of minutes to take a look at things, before asking if he wants to play with the new air-powered rocket launcher we had. "No thanks, I know Santa, I don't need your help," he replies flatly. This was mildly unusual, but hey, he was a pretty sweet kid otherwise. Unfortunately, I didn't know much in there that would have been good for a kid his age. I figured it'd probably be his dad or someone paying for it. So I started showing him some of the limited stuff that would be suitable for some of the older kids. I show him a few things and he sees something he likes. This big massage. It's one big slipper that you put both feet into, and it has various massage settings. Not the kind of thing I'd imagine him to pick out, but a fairly cool gift nonetheless. So he asked, "How much is it?" And I tell him it's like $20 or whatever the price was. He then instantly looks angry and frustrated. "Is that a bit too expensive, bud?" I ask, keeping the tone friendly. I don't want this kid to be upset, and he nods, so I show him some other things. And he starts getting more and more difficult to deal with. He's frowning, breathing all heavy through his nose, like he's building up to some kind of temper tantrum. He starts telling me again how he knows Santa, how Santa gives toys away to good kids and doesn't ask for money in return. I just calmly explain that I can't just give stuff away for free, then politely leave him to it to browse the rest of the toys. A couple more minutes go by and I'm just sitting by the cash register reading a book. Since the store is so quiet, it's only me and the kid with my manager up in the office. I remember looking up from my book and the kid was at the register, just staring up at me, with his angry look on his face. Once again, I apologized and explained to the kid that as much as I'd like to, I can't just give stock away, otherwise I'll get fired. "Your boss is mean," the kid says, seething with anger at this point. Now, this probably wasn't the best thing to do, but since the kid was so on the money with this little statement, my boss was indeed a jerk. I just laughed, not like hysterically, just like it was a little involuntary giggle. The kid does not take this well. He thinks I'm laughing at him. "Why are you laughing at me?" he asks, practically shaking with rage. I begin to explain to him I'm not actually laughing at him, but I soon realize it's not getting through to him. He just storms out of the store, disappearing among the crowds of middle-aged women that are clogging up the mall. As the afternoon draws on, the store gets a little busier, and I get to actually do some work. Like I said, the store was fun, so it was never a problem. Being busy meant the hours go quicker, which means I get home quicker. Win-win. So I make a few sales, get to test out some of the fancy new Nerf guns we had in the store, and the weird kid eventually just slips from my mind. Nothing remotely eventful happens for the rest of the day. Right up until closing time, when I'm starting my stock take and working on closing down the store, someone is standing at the register. I look up from my worksheet, and it's the kid. I give him a cheery enough greeting, hoping the kid's mood has improved, but it hasn't. Instead, it's gotten worse. "You are mean too," he hisses. "Look, I'm sorry, kid, but where are your parents?" I asked. But the kid refuses to answer. He just glares at me again. "Kid, where are your parents? I don't have to call mall security, but you can't be wandering around on your own, okay?" "He knows when you are sleeping," the kid mutters. I roll my eyes, but the way he says it has me really creeped out. He knows when you're awake. He knows when you've been bad or good, and you've been really, really bad. Where's your pop, kid?" I ask again, trying to remain calm. "North Pole." "Yeah, very funny, but seriously, you gotta go. The store's closing. He's going to climb down your chimney, covered in soot, all while you're asleep," the kid said. I didn't say a word in reply. "He'll know when you're asleep. He'll be able to creep up right next to your bed." I reach for the store's phone, dialing the mall security short number. I try not to listen to the kid, but I can't help but hear his words over the phone's dial tone. "He's going to stuff your mouth with coal until you choke and die." I turned ready to scream at this creepy little brat. It's one thing to be a spoiled kid. It's another to say such threatening things to someone who's only trying to help you. But when I turned around, the kid was gone. Not a sign of him, even outside the store in the emptying mall. I've only told this story a handful of times, but it never fails to creep me out. The idea of such a kid having such a skewed idea of Santa as some weird avenging angel, having a warped view of the holiday season, never fails to make my skin crawl. My son Josh is a great kid. He's always been the quirky and curious type, taking up hard watches, toys, and the like, just to see if he can put them back together again. His curiosity, however, took a dark turn when his mother died. Josh became a different kid after that. He suddenly became obsessed with the notion of death and what it means. Thus, it came as no surprise when I found out what he decided to do for his science fair project. "I'm testing the line between life and death, Dad," he had said matter-of-factly as he sat eating his German French toast. What do you mean, buddy? What's this?" Josh seized my iPhone, which had been resting on the table, and flung it into the kitchen sink before I could stop him. Josh turned the water on and seized the can opener, whacking my phone repeatedly. The screen cracked and the phone itself died. I wanted to yell, but I knew that wasn't the right thing to do. I had to discipline him some other way. Josh, why would you do that? Do you know how much that thing cost for me to get that fixed? Don't worry, Dad. You won't have to pay for anything. He picked up the phone out of the sink and ran upstairs to his room. I started after him, shaking my head. I seized about my son's troubling, spontaneous behavior all day at work. When I got home, however, I found my iPhone screen completely fixed and all. I picked it up, studying it, and found that it was working as if nothing had happened at all. Buddy, Josh came running down the stairs, goggles over his eyes, with a PlayStation controller in his hand. Who did you get to fix this, and when did he get the money to pay for it? Josh tilted his head. What do you mean? I did it myself. That was my first experiment for my project, Dad. I move on to phase 2 and document everything tomorrow. I watched confused as he ran back up the stairs. I had no idea what he was up to, but I was just happy I didn't have to pay an arm and a leg to get my phone fixed, or to get a new one. Josh's little experiment seemed harmless. Then came phase 2. I walked into the kitchen the next morning, prepared to make breakfast and coffee, and stopped to my tracks. Josh was standing in front of the counter, a pigeon strapped down on the cutting board in front of him, and I immediately had a bad feeling about this. Josh, buddy, what in the world are you doing? Josh held up a large pair of scissors. It's phase 2, now watch this. I lunged towards the counter, but it was too late. In one swift move, Josh had decapitated the helpless bird. There was a sickening clipping sound, and then the blood was leaking all over the cutting board and my kitchen counter. This time, I lost it. Josh, what the hell is the matter with you? Why did you do that? Josh looked frightened by my reaction. He didn't expect me to lose my mind after watching him kill an innocent animal. Dad, I already told you, it's phase 2. I dropped him off at school and called a psychiatrist. Maybe his mother's death was hitting him harder than he had let on. I have heard stories about serial killers killing live animals when they were children, and I'll be damned if my son turned into a killer. I scheduled an appointment for the next day. When I got home, I found Josh sitting on the couch in the living room, writing in his journal. His poster board from his project was leaning against the wall by the TV. I couldn't help but notice there was bird crap next to the TV as well. Josh, what as a pigeon swooped past my head and landed on the couch cooing? Softly, I jumped it in, hoping to grab it before Josh could. But he made no moves. The pigeon shot back off into the air out of my reach. Why is there another bird in here? I swear, It's not another bird, Dad. It's the same one from earlier today. Josh and I stared at each other for a few seconds. I was sizing him up while simultaneously wondering what the hell had suddenly gone wrong. That can't be, Josh. You cut that bird's head off, remember? Yeah, I put it back and I brought him back. This project is going really, really well, Dad. I'll beat semi-pigeons for sure this year. I was entirely positive that Josh had captured another bird and was losing his mind. But when I checked the garbage can, the bag that I placed the decapitated bird in was gone. This had gone past the point of too far. Josh had gotten rid of the corpse. It was attempting to convince me that he had somehow raised it from the dead. This was meticulous and premeditated. I really did worry about my son, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I slept with my door locked that night. Well, until about 2 in the morning. That is when I was woken by the last thing you want to hear at 2 o'clock in the morning. Someone beating nonstop on your front door. Well, beating may be a harsh word. Whoever was knocking on the door was doing it forcefully, but it was not much strength behind the knocks. Still, it scared the hell out of me, but not nearly as much as the sight of Josh standing in the living room, white as a sheet, staring at the door. Josh, what are you doing out of bed? Josh turned to me, his eyes wide in terror. What? What's the matter, pal? Go back upstairs, I'll figure out who this is. Don't open the door, Dad. I messed up. The slow knocking continued behind. Messed up how? Josh stared at me in the eyes. I wanted to do something really good for phase 3, so I brought Mom back. Knock, 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 knock. Joshua, your mother has been dead for almost 2 years. This isn't funny. I made a move for the door, but Josh jumped in front of me, grabbing my hand. Don't open it, Dad, don't open it. He and I are still sitting in the house. The knocking has stopped. but now there is a coring at the window. I keep asking my son if he can undo this mishap, but he say he's only one thing. I'm going to beat Cindy Pickens for sure this year.